necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to the listening public, the beautiful people here on the island of Nevis, those in our sister island of St. Christopher, those who are scattered throughout this Caribbean Sea. Good evening to our friends and family in North America, Canada, and the United States. Those of you who are across the pond in the United Kingdom, who I know stay up even though it's late, good evening to you. And I say welcome to another edition of On The Mark. I'm your host, Mark Brantley, and this evening we will be here with what we hope is an interesting show. We always try to bring something that will generate some debate and dialogue, some discussion in the Nivision and wider Kittitian, Nivision and wider diasporic community. It is important, I feel, that we continue to engage with each other respectfully, that we use platforms such as this, which have been developed over the past decade and a half with the assistance, of course, of the good people here at VON Radio and with the sponsorship of the law firm Daniel Brantley over all these years. We continue to be the only show of our kind, 2 hours of commercial-free talk radio, 2 hours of primetime talk, as we say, talk that goes across the narrows, straight talk across the narrows. And that has been our position, that has been our mantra, that has been the ethos that has informed this show over all these years. I like to think that we're doing our part to contribute, of course, to freedom of expression, a cornerstone of any democratic society. And so we have used this show over the years to invite guests, to have different segments of our society and our community to come and to make their contribution. At the top of the show, let me express, of course, condolences to all of those who would have lost loved ones, our blessings and prayers for those who might be hospitalized or are in any way, shape or form struggling physically, mentally, emotionally or otherwise. We understand these are the times and difficulties abound. And so we, of course, reach out as we always do to our brothers and sisters and to say to them that they are in our thoughts and in our prayers. Let me also send greetings to those who are celebrating. I usually, at the top of the show, would seek to use whatever information has been made available to me. And so, if I'm not calling names, it may well just be that I don't have all the names, but I do have one name. And this is a youngster all the way there in New York City. His name is Xavier Charles. Xavier, I hope you're listening. It's not yet past your bedtime. You'll be turning 8 years old on the 27th of this month, 27th of February, and we would want to wish you a happy birthday when it comes. Birthday greetings going out to you from your entire family circle there in New York. Your loving family in New York, Xavier, wishing you a happy birthday, and all of us here at VON Radio doing the same. So young Xavier Charles, Master Xavier Charles, is celebrating 8 years on the 27th, and his family wants him to know he's loved and appreciated. While I am in that sort of celebratory mood, let me say to the members of the public that we know that through the COVID-19 pandemic, our well-loved sports, primary sports, high school sports, etc., it has been problematic to have those staged. I'm told now that sports days are in fact happening, and that the cross country for the Cicely Brown Integrated School, that will be Friday morning, this Friday, and their sports day will be Wednesday the 2nd of March under the patronage of Mr. Robert Liddy. And so the students of the Cicely Brown Integrated School will have their cross country this Friday and their sports day on Wednesday the 2nd March under the patronage of Mr. Liddy. I have also from the Ministry of Education here in Nevis, and I'm sure they'll publish this shortly, but they've asked me to say that the school sports are well and definitely on. Tuesday, trying to get the dates here now, I imagine that should be Tuesday the 1st of March. We're going to have the school sports at the St. James Primary School. Wednesday the 2nd of March, they're going to have at the Cicely Brown Integrated School, as I've just said. Thursday the 3rd of March, rejoicing in Libert Primary School. And then we go to Wednesday the 9th of March, the St. Thomas's Primary School. The big green machine over there will be having its sports day. Then on the 10th of March, the Elizabeth Pemberton Primary School. The 11th of March, my alma mater, the Ivor Walters Primary School and the Gingerland Preschool will be having their little sports as well. And then we have the Charlestown Primary School, the big orange machine. On the 16th of March, the Cumbermere Preschool and the Gingerland Secondary School, both on the 17th of March. The Violet O'Jeffers Viogen Primary School and the Ines France Preschool on the 18th of March. And then we have on the 22nd of March, the Nevis Academy and the Charlestown Preschool. On the 23rd, the St. John's Preschool. And then, finally, to finish that month, we have the Maud Cross Preparatory School on the 29th of March. Those are the sports days that I have been given notice of here. And I give you notice now, all the sports days will be at the Mondo track. And we are using that facility because, of course, of the size and because we'll be better able at that facility to have persons appropriately spaced. We can't ignore the fact that COVID is still with us, and so we are adhering to the necessary protocols. And so the sports days will be at the Mondo track except for the Viogen and the St. James Primary. Those two schools, because of their size, have been granted an exemption, and those two schools therefore will have their sports day at their usual ground, at the school grounds. But all other schools will have their sports day at the Mondo track. And I know the question now is being, will we have the interprimary? We're working on that, and we will bring an announcement on that very soon. But that is, of course, the big question. Will we have the mini Olympics this year? We have not had it in 2 years, and so students are chomping at the bit. The schools want, once again, to have bragging rights. I know Ivor Walters is looking in the wings to claim it all this year, and so it is going to be interesting to see how that goes. So we are looking at it. We are definitely recognizing that sport is an integral part of the children's development. It is not just about the academics, and that engaging in sports is healthy, and it teaches them a lot about character, teamwork, and critical skills that are necessary for their involvement in our society. Ladies and gentlemen, there's much to talk about, but tonight we are going to have, I hope I'm not being presumptuous when I say my friends, who are back with us. And I say back with us because they become regular fixtures here and on the mark, at least once a year, sometimes more. They're here. And when they come, I can't give them no 20 minutes and tell them thank you. They want the whole show. So they're here. They've come for discussion as always. And what I will do at this point is to allow them to introduce themselves and allow them to tell us why they're here and what we're going to be discussing this evening.
Greetings in the name of His and Her Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I and His Empress Menin, God and Goddess. You know, we are the members of the One Love Rastafari movement, you know. And usually this time of the year, this time of the month, you know, we celebrate a Black Story Month, even though it is the shortest month in the year, you know. And we have some activities that the One Love Rastafari movement will be putting on. We've already gone through one or two of it, but because of the situation as it is, you know, we're being a little short for this month. But we're here, and we're going to be going into some serious discussion, you know, not just on One Love, but, you know, Black Story right across the Iverse, you know. And my name is Marcus Tafari, you know, Rastafari.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I greetings in the divine name of His Holy Eye, Emperor Haile Selassie and Empress Menin. And Rastafari, it's always a pleasure to be here on Van Radio. Always a pleasure to be on the mark. Always a pleasure to be able to share with the general public, you know, some of what's been happening within the Rastafari community. Where we stand in this Iowa at this time, and what Rastafari see is very important and fitting. Where do we see ourselves at 2022, and the kind of impact that Rastafari should be making on this economy at this time. We have quite a bit to talk about tonight. You know, we want to touch on some of the hot topics that's all around. And we sure hope that members out there can see it fit to call in and engage as usual. It's always nice to have, you know, the feed forward from the general public. I just want to bless up the Rastafari community out there, our elders, the members of the One Love Rastafari movement locally here in Nevis, the members of the OIU, the Organization of Rastafari in Unity. That's our national organization, including or comprising Rasses from St. Kitts and Nevis. And of course, our regional body, the CRO, the Caribbean Rastafari Organization, one which we are very much a part of and active. You know, so it's good to be here. There's a lot happening within the region at this time. It's been quite tough for Rastafari surviving within this whole, you know, the whole COVID situation. But it's good we are here, and we'll always be here. Looking forward to a good discussion tonight, man.
All right, well, gentlemen, welcome again. As I said, no strangers to the show. We are interested, naturally, because I think more than any other organization or group, you have almost sometimes, it appears, single-handedly kept the idea of Africa and Africanism, if you will, kept the idea of black pride and progress centerfold and in a central position insofar as your philosophy, your lifestyle, and the things you have said. I notice even in terms of the language that you use. I notice you don't want any feedback, you want feed forward. These are some of the things that, you know, I always find interesting. But the issue for me is that you have been here, you have been participating, you have been contributing. What are the events that you're looking forward to for this year's celebration? And as you say, the month of February, for whatever reason, has been said to be Black History Month. I see that always as a little curious, because we live our history and we celebrate our history every day. But to the extent that the world has decided to designate a month for a focus, if you will, on Black history, what are some of the events? What are some of the activities? What can we expect? I know that this show tonight is part of that, because when you called, you said you wanted to be on the air, on the show, as part and parcel of your own messaging and activities for this particular period of celebration. But are there any other specific events? I know you said, Ras Marcus, that some events have already occurred. So could you fill in the public in terms of what's happening, what they might be able to expect, what has happened already, and what we can look forward to?
Yeah, greetings. We already done a couple of events. One of the things that we did is that Saturday, Fogan, you know, Nevis having 5 parishes, and the elderly, the most needy, you know, in each of the parish, would have gone around and deliver a food hamper, you know, a combination of fruits, vegetables, toiletries, you know, organic stuff to kind, you know, help prevail in the health of the elderly. You know, that's one of the things that we would have done. We will celebrate the 6th of February. That's the day when the great Bob Marley would have born, and we have been hampered at that time because of circumstances beyond our control to really do something that we never really get to do, but that's part of our event. for this coming Saturday, we have another big celebration coming up. You know, it's our Ujamas, where it's a combination of, you know, drummers, poachers, selling foods, vegetables, cook ital food, and we inviting all of the ones around, you know, who want to make a contribution, seeing that it's our Black Story Month, you know, going forward as one. Then we're going to be journeying over to St. Kitts on Friday afternoon to team up with our members, the organization of Rastafari Unity. But they're going to be putting on another celebration down there as well. You know, we're trying to get the message right across the board, you know, so that people can partake with our story and understand what the black man is going through in these times. So I'm going to leave the rest up to us.
Yes. One thing I want to add on the Saturday's event, Saturday coming, which Brother Marcus would have outlined, is called Ujama. It's really one of the fourth principle of Kwanzaa, meaning cooperative economics. It's an event we have the last Saturday of each month. Basically, what it does, it gives each and everyone an opportunity to make some money. At the same time, gives the organization a chance to make some money. So the principle called cooperative economics, you know, it's basically allowing different vendors from around the island, people who are into the craft, local, natural, organic, you know, anything along that line, to come and set up a table and you know, and they benefit from whatever sales they make. It's open to the members and the public, and also the organization itself will control most of the food and beverage. This Saturday, though, is specially dedicated to Pharaoh Chesley Davis. He has always been with I when it comes to Black History Month. We had a few programs and so on to take care of this month, and so we just want to recognize and acknowledge the work that he would have done for I within Rastafari and even within the whole general public here in Nevis, St. Kitts Nevis, I must say. So Saturday would be dubbed honoring and remembering Pharaoh. We can look forward to another big event in April. It's on the 3rd and the 17th, actually. One in St. Kitts and one in Nevis. And it's dubbed honoring our ancestors and recognizing our elders. It's basically paying homage and tribute to the stalwarts that we would have lost along the way. Those locally, regionally, and internationally. And it's also giving I a chance to show some appreciation of, you know, to our elders who are living amongst I right now. You know, we will be honoring them with some, you know, we have a good package set aside for them. We'll be doing some in Nevis and some over in St. Kitts. So we'll be moving back and forth on those dates. Very important to I, because as an African people, it's really where it starts at the elders. And the elders will be the one who have that level of control within the community. Always the elders first. And so we maintain that tradition within Rastafari. And well, basically we will be starting a health luncheon. It should be on a monthly basis. We'll be bringing the people of Nevis an ital lunch with a difference, and so later on you'll hear about that as that project really develops. Where we're at right now, we're still battling with the farming, you know, fighting the monkeys, getting ready to implement a project now though. that would hopefully take care of our monkey situation to an extent. We also setting ourselves to be a part of the upcoming cannabis industry. You know, hopefully we'll get, not just as Rastafari, but as locals, we'll get a really good opportunity to make some benefits, make some serious economic benefits from that. But that's basically what we have on the plate coming up in terms of activities. You know, I think you'll be able to recognize quite a bit of ganja talk, the whole hype and the whole education process and cannabis. I think would be topped up a notch. We'll be back in the communities. Now we can move about a little easier. You know, educating the general public about the herb. It was something that was promised in terms of over a period of time there should be a level of education, so that at a particular time we can go back to the giant table and get some more leeway on the herb. So we'll be definitely on that project. I think we're going to be starting maybe the second or the last week in March.
Yeah, another thing that we are doing for our Black Story Month, you know, is to go into the schools. Well, I should say St. James's, St. Thomas's. We wanted to view Jane and Elizabeth, and we're doing some organic farming. You know, we're using the recycling tires. You know, I guess everybody understands what I mean when I say recycling tires. Tires that you know, you get rid of, where you cut out the tires and put them down to the ground and fill them with manure and soil. And we have put plant stuff inside of them so the school can get organic food to eat, you know. We're doing one right now down in St. Thomas's. We're planting different stuff down there over in St. James's. We got, like I said, we're going to be doing VOJN and also Elizabeth Pemberton. And these things coming from the background of the One Love Rastafari movement. Right now we're looking for somebody to give us a sponsorship within the Elizabeth Pemberton. So we're going out there, Honorable Premier. You know, I know you're the man responsible for education here in here in Nevis. So we're looking for some sort of sponsorship for the Elizabeth Pemberton.
I like the way you say somebody and then brought it back to the premier. You know, I like, but you know, I'm always supportive. Whatever I can do, brother, I will always try to do. I was interested, Rasai, when you say it's I tell you the difference, because I want to ask if you had meat in it. You know? That's the question I wanted to ask. I'm happy you've touched on the issue of marijuana. Ganja, herb, whatever it is, sensimilla, whatever word we would want to use. The reason I say I'm happy that you've touched on it is because it's become a sort of current debate, not just here but globally. I think that we are all at this table old enough, and many of our listeners are old enough to know when even the discussion was taboo, that, you know, it was something that you ran and hid to deal with that police. A lot of men get locked up and spend time in prison for marijuana. Now I think that a different approach and a different discussion has taken place. I have been in discussions with various members of your faith and your thinking for a long time, and I recall that one of the times I said that societies evolve, but sometimes you can't force the evolution, that you continue with your agitation and education, but it's something that has to happen almost organically. And yes, there will be leaders. We've had the civil rights movement, we've had all kinds of movements, but at the end of the day, I think society itself needs to evolve. Question is whether or not, in your opinion, we have evolved to a point now where this discussion on this issue of marijuana, which everybody acknowledges is a plant that grows naturally, it has no additives, no synthetic substance, it's organic, to use the word you use, Marcus, So the issue really is, why has this plant been criminalized for so long? Why have so many people suffered for so long, been imprisoned for so long, had their door kicked down and their family terrorized at 4 o'clock in the morning for a plant that grows freely? And now, whether or not the society now you think is ready to just really move to the next level. I can tell at the government there have been some very intense discussions, and I think Rastafari, you're part of some kind of grouping that is looking at licensing and that type of approach, which is a governmental regulatory approach to this. But in your own movements in the community, in your own interaction with members of the community, in your own continuing efforts to educate about this plant, do you get a sense that there's some great appreciation for and acceptance of this idea? And I tell you, I asked it against a particular backdrop. I spoke to an elderly lady who told me that she has a little business, and I found what she said was instructive. She said she didn't really mind that the young people said they want to smoke marijuana, but she don't want nobody blow it in her face. And sometime when they gather up in tongues smoking the marijuana, the weed a come out through she window, the smoke a come through she window, and she don't want no part of that. So the question is really, how do we get a balance? Clearly not everybody is going to agree. You got a whole heap of man out there drink rum, and some people say no to alcohol. You have a whole heap of people smoke cigarette, some people say no to cigarette. And so similarly you have a whole heap of people using marijuana, and some people say no to marijuana. But how do you get to the balance in your view? And what, if any, difference have you seen in terms of society and society's willingness, if you will, to embrace, and if not embrace, at least accept that perhaps the times have now changed?
Well, I'm glad you have mentioned a few of the atrocities that I as Rastafari and people out in the general public would have gone through, would have faced during the times of, you know, this whole execution of those I call them ancient draconian laws, you know. It's glad that you mentioned them, because it is really for those same reasons that I as Rastafari would have taken the approach that we would have taken when it comes to, you know, the whole herb, which is a reparatory approach. We are saying that for all these years of suffering, wrongful suffering, immoral and to an extent illegal suffering, that it's about time that some level of compensation or reparation be looked at for the Rastafari community and those of us who would have suffered from the herb. And I think this is the stage where I'll be, you know, comfortable when we're discussing. Where we're at now, I would have gotten some word, as we say, because some people feel like I might be on a committee and I would have all the say, and Rasta not get enough and Rasta not get this. I mean, I personally will feel straight up, and I would, you know, Rasta, it's not enough for Rastafari. We have to look at it, not that here we have the government or the country willing to give Rastafari something that they never had. I am looking at it from the standpoint where the country would have taken away what Rastafari had, and we have gotten back just a little portion. So that is the way I am looking at it. But at the same time, it is a blessing, because I can sit on my terrace, I can be on my farm, I can be in my yard, I can be smoking my ganja, policeman can pass me back and forth, and I don't have that fear of being harassed, because there's a level of tolerance that, you know, has been exhibited. We have oftentimes when we gather as Rastafari, we'd have to be looking over our shoulders and wondering if Babylon going to come and interrupt and interfere and search us up for ganja, We don't have that fear right now because it is understood that when Rastafari gather, the use of the herb is expected, and as such it is respected by the laws of this country. And so there isn't that much fear. It's a little more comforting where you are allowed a certain amount. And so I would say we have taken a step. It is a giant step, because back then, just to be associated with, not the herb, just to be associated with people who are associated with it, as you say, was taboo. These days you have doctors, lawyers, everybody in society, granny and everybody want a little tea for the arthritis and all these kind of things. And the level of discussion that we are having, we have gone into the Attorney General's office many times, being called to the table to discuss these issues as how we go forward on the herb. Before time, these things would never have happened. There are some laws, some regulations in place. I think it's time that we go back to the board and revise some of them. Some of them definitely not working. But one of the challenges I know is the smoking in public, which is something that Rastafari would have also recognized. One of the recommendations that we would have made early was have designated smoking areas in certain places. I feel the same about cigarette smoking, about tobacco smoking. I don't think people should be allowed to sit amongst other people and smoke, and it is making other people uncomfortable, or at sometimes uncomfortable. I don't think that should be allowed, whether it is ganja, barbecue, whatever it is, So I think there should be designated areas. If there's an event, there should be a designated area, well, depending on the type of event, so that if people want to smoke, they can smoke in town. Because we can't get away from it, There, you go to an event and you could find the ganja section anytime. You come in town, you find the ganja section. I really can't justify why some people would do it, but it's there.
But that's a question, Ira. I mean, I hear you, I understand, and part of the debate. I don't think my advice at the time to certain of your brethren might have been appreciated, but I did say to them that it is a process. And sometimes people say, well, the process is too slow, or why do you expect us to take incremental steps? But we can debate all day what the past was and what the history was and why this happened and why it should not have happened. But the reality is the reality. And if we are looking to move forward, the question is, how do you move forward? And sometimes, if something was the one way today and you say, boy, from tomorrow it's a different thing, the society itself may not be prepared for it, and as a consequence it doesn't work quite the way you want. So incremental steps sometimes are important as people get accustomed, and I think that with the benefit of hindsight, it has actually, in my view, worked fairly well, because as you now say, so many people are now feeling a lot more comfortable. We have had whole shows on this show, for example, which is a large platform on this very issue, and so we get the sense, the very real sense, that the debate that we're seeing now is far more open. The debate that we're seeing now is a debate that far more individuals are prepared to engage in, and as a consequence, I think the conversation is happening, the society benefits, and more people are learning. In the past, when I was a little boy growing up in Brownhill, Brownhill was a place where you had plenty of Rastaman, and it was a standing warning from my mother, don't come in here smelling a weed, otherwise, I mean, you thought that death and all was better than that, you understand? That was the situation. I know you in school, and all the difficulties, you had fellas like Naya and those guys who were in sixth form and ran themselves, why? Over marijuana, So we understand that. We understand that this has been an ongoing situation. But I wonder sometimes if we don't make it more difficult because of some of the sort of demands, and one of that is the whole thing about the public smoking. I have a lot of friends and people I consider to be my brothers who smoke ganja, and the vast majority of them will tell you, listen, I do this in the comfort of my home. I have a brethren who have a farm. He said, I do it in the comfort, on my farm. I build my meditation, and that's what it's about. You got to see the other man who wants to sit down in the square and wrap a spliff and light it, and it's almost like, well, it's a show. It's a kind of thing. I need to sit down on 4th Street because the ganja is sweeter if you sit down on 4th Street when you smoke it, or if you sit down on Main Street when you smoke it. And I think that is really where the disconnect comes in. That most people are probably saying, and I always hesitate to talk for most people, but my opinion is that most people are probably saying, listen, if I, Roy, and Marcus want to do something in the confines and privacy of their home, or you want the Rastafari movement want to do something in the privacy of their where they get together as a religious sacrament or whatever, that is one thing. But if everybody wants to go in town and sit down in the square and roll a spliff, build a spliff, and you walk their man got a whole chalice and smoke up and down like crazy around the town, just like you said, the barbecue smoke and whatever. The question is, is that something that should be allowed? The same thing with the cigarettes. So the idea of, okay, you have to designate an area, whether it's at the club or in the bar or in the concert or in town, and say, boy, this is an area where a man can go. Your question that comes back is why? Why, in the sense that, is there need for a public display of this? It's like I just want to just finish this thought quickly. In New York, I used to spend a lot of time there, and the summers in New York are hot and brutal, sticky. Humidity is high, and we used to be able to sit on the steps at my father's house in the Bronx, outside on the steps, and drink beer. Sit down and relax and drink beer. Suddenly the man introduced something, said, no, you can't be drinking in public like that. So if the police come along and catch you on your own step drinking beer, they give you a ticket. Then I remember the what they call the festival now, the Labor Day in Brooklyn, the Labor Day parade. They said, no problem, you're up and down with the band jamming and thing with the beer in your hand and thing. The man said, no, you got to be in some kind of paper bag, you got to be covered. And then after that they said, no, they ban it all together. So the only thing you can do now is drink. Man, I go down a side street and think to try and drink something and come back. Because I think, again, it's the whole question of the evolution. So the issue really is, right now, as you say, there's been a relaxed approach. People can consume ganja in their home. People can, in the privacy, do what they have to do. And I think the problem really has arisen, even with members of the public, like this elderly lady, is when man decided they're going to come in Charleston and light up the biggest spliff they could find. Sometimes I wonder if a big bush them a smoke, because the amount of smoke them a thing, right? And just light up the place and whatever, and it's as if a man try to say, well, boy, you're forcing it down another person's throat, kind of thing. So that's really a legitimate debate.
So like the thing, guys, you obviously know the big bush will give off more smoke. But let's look at the whole idea of smoking. Now, definitely, there are some. Well, let's go back to the square. Well, public, as in just sit down on the square. I feel the same way about the way alcohol is used in the square too. Not saying it is right, because I would have earlier said I think there should be a designated area. But let's look at why people smoke. Now, obviously, as a youngster growing up, there's some things we do, just to be cool, to look cool. Sometimes we used to buy malt and throw it in a Guinness bottle, and just to look cool. So I'm sure that is one of the reasons. We are very communal people. We get together, and whenever we get together, we usually do things together. a lot of us drink. We play domino. Some of us smoke. The vibes, let's talk about the vibes that you get from smoking. That in itself lends it way to wanting to be in a communal setting. There are some people who still share a joint and pass the joint left to right and so on. So there's that level of a display of our communal living. Some might say ritual, whatever you want to call it. It is very much so within Rastafari, you know, but it is also so from a recreational standpoint. Now, we also have to be careful how we dictate to people as to how they should use the herb. Some people drink it, some people cook with it, some people smoke it, you know, people do all kind of different things. And so, you know, these are the different ways you know, and things you'll find. I personally think that there should be designated areas. If I want to, on my lunch break, after lunch, sit down and burn a joint, I should be allowed to do that. I've worked at Four Seasons, and they had a little section where you can leave work and come and take a cigarette break, and people have a little area where they take the cigarette, to a couple puffs, and then they go back on the job and work, you know. But I think instead of trying to fight it, you know, we should be educated about it. People should learn to respect other people's space. However, studies from marijuana smoke have shown that it is not as bad as people are making it to be. As a matter of fact, it is actually one of the therapeutic activities for someone who is suffering from an asthma attack. Believe it or not, because the smoke of marijuana opens the air passages, which is exactly what you need to happen when someone has an asthma attack. And so education goes a long way as to how we accept things, you know, and if people know what they can and couldn't do and what's the danger and so on, I think they will accept these laws and the change of laws and so on in a better way. And I could remember asking for, let's get on with the education process. We did say we have to do it over a period of time. It's really needed.
Well, yeah, Marcus, go ahead.
Well, you talk about on a Friday afternoon, you go downtown and you see ones and ones, you know, in the back street, maybe in the square, puffing up the smoke and so on, right? But there's a certain principle and certain guidelines within Rastafari, you know, that ones have to follow. There's certain guidelines. I would not, personally, talk about myself, which mostly I use herb, you know, mostly for that drinking purpose, for tea purpose. But I wouldn't find myself go downtown and try to blow up a smoke in, you know, in a one space, in a one, you know, where they don't want any to be around. Now, if we have an event, Rastafari event, in the square in Charleston, you know, the herb is part of our sacrament and so on. You know, you really expect that the herb will be used. But to just go out there and just blow up, no, I totally disagree with that. I mean, like I said, you know, you give us your own space. And I think Rastafari find it better to just go there. And not just Rastafari, the brethren and sisters who is on the street and want to have a little leeway in going out there and use the herb. You know, you see, the system what they make it hard for the man, the little man on the street. If that would have happened long time ago, you give the man the leeway. You know, you wouldn't have this kind of complaint and so on. You know, but let's look at the herb on a economic basis.
Before you go to the economics, because I wanted to go there as well, I just want to ask, could part of the issue about the public smoking, and we're dealing specifically with smoking, could part of it be that there is some effect from the what we call the second-hand smoke? What I mean by that is, they say studies have shown that cigarette smoking, for example, because of the carcinogens in cigarette, that second-hand smoke can cause people problems, even though they're not a smoker themselves. Can, for example, somebody get a high from second-hand smoke for marijuana? Because if the answer to that is yes, that might also explain why some people say, listen, you can't really liken it to drinking, because if a man next to you get drunk, that's his business. He don't really, him getting drunk doesn't get you drunk.
True.
If a man next to you puffing and blowing up smoke and you're inhaling that, the question is, can that give you a high as well? Because if that is not what I'm into, I mean, really and truly, it comes down to a broad question of mutual respect and respecting each other's rights and things of that nature. And sometimes something that you do can impact somebody else who doesn't want to be impacted by it.
To answer your question, because Marcus is not a smoker, so I don't know if he could answer that. For you to get high from second-hand smoke, you and I have to be in an enclosed environment. Number one, or you have to be standing up next to me and getting my puffs every time I exhale. Most of the time we are talking about passerby, and sometimes depending on where the youngsters hang out, you pass the area and you could smell you could smell it.
Sure.
It carries a very high scent.
Yeah.
You know, it carries a very high scent. Not necessarily that the air is all filled with it. But if you're in a closed environment like a car, you know, you can get defects depending on your tolerance for the herb.
And also in terms of the environment, you know, and the high scent. If you pass, you know, you can get it on your clothing. You get it, and you know. So I can sometimes you interact with people and you smell. You don't see them smoking, but you smell it.
Yeah.
So that's also an issue. But let's move quickly. I don't want to belabor that. Let's move quickly to the economic side. I think that we're here with obviously two members of the Rastafari faith, belief, you know, your thinking. We're here talking about the black history and the story, as you said, of black people generally. But this is an important part of the debate, because I have said so publicly that if any single group can stand up and say we have suffered the most because of marijuana, it's Rasta. Let's face it, you know, because Rasta said it's part of your sacrament, because it's part of what you do, I think you have suffered more than most for that. Some call it religious persecution, whatever you want to say. I think there was a time when, you know, you get arrested, they cut your locks. I mean, we all know how these things have happened, and as I said, the atrocities, I think that's the language that has been used of the past. The issue for me, though, is that the whole issue of marijuana now, and when we talk about the economics, Marcus, where you want to get to, is not only about Rasta. In fact, some may argue it don't have even nothing to do with Rasta. This is about a wider societal shift now. It's not as if the lawmakers and the cabinet and the parliament are considering, let us carve out something for marijuana for Rastas because it's part of their religion, it's part of their sacrament. No, they're saying, let us do a whole societal shift. And so anybody, Rasta or Rascal, can get involved in this thing. Now, we understand that there are aspects to the commercialization and the economic activity that we're talking about. You have, of course, those who are coming with the high science and want to do laboratories and research and all of that. And going back to what Ira was mentioning about asthma, they want to develop medicine and using the herb. You also, of course, have people who just want to get a high. They want to feel good. And so whether you're a tourist or you're whatever, you want to come and you want to feel good. Just a man will go out and drink something to feel good. And you have that aspect of it. You have those who want to use the tea and all of that for the calming influence and all that it brings. You got creams, you got different applications. And then a big application to is food. I mean, I was surprised that there was some place and I was listening to some young people and they have this term, edibles. I mean, they didn't know what they mean by edibles, and they're telling me edibles is marijuana infused brownie and and gummy beer and chocolate and all kind of thing they're doing now. So you have a wide range of possibilities: scientific, religious, purely commercial, recreational. And the question is, how do you see yourselves? How do you see the society evolving and the economics of it?
First, Rastafari deserve an apology, for the atrocity that the system has put on I, as I chat over the past years within the advancement of Rastafari. Now, the other day we would have realized that the economy in St. Nevis would have come to the knees because there wasn't another vibrant space there, here to help build up the system. You see what the virus would have done. Mm-hmm. Now, if you had, let's say, marijuana as a crop, out there to help replace the tourism industry, that would not have happened. For over the years, I as a people, as a Rastaman, we crying out to the government, to see the very important of the ganja hub, what it can do within the economy. But the government is still not listening. I don't think they're listening because up to now, even though they would have played a little role in going forward, we still need to see some more advancement.
So the progress is not as fast.
The progress is not as fast.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So if that would have been put in place long time ago, the economy of St. Nevis would have been, now falling to the knees as such as it was going the other day. But now we see what ganja can do. And I'm hoping that the government would, pave the way now for I as Rasta people, for the injustice which are handed over to us. We get our portion. We make sure that our children can, be there and get what they supposed to be supporting for them. We need to see ganja spread right across St. Nevis. It can be another industry to build our structure here in St. Nevis.
So, in your opinion, because I don't know if you use the word, but as you're talking, I'm hearing the words reparations ringing in my ear. Because that has also been, of course, a topic of conversation. Ira, you've been here, you've spoken about it many times in a broader context, in the sense of slavery and what we would have endured as African people. Are you saying that in the context of the acknowledged suffering that Rastas have endured, that there is some type of reparatory work that needs to be done for Rastas in relation to this particular topic of marijuana? Are you asking for some kind of carve-out, for example, special arrangement? Let us say, for sake of argument, there's a licensing regime. I mean, should Rastas require a license? If they do require a license, should it be free for them as opposed to others who would have to pay, etc.? How do you think this would look, and does the organization have a position on it, in terms of a formal position to say, well, okay, this is what this community would like, because I agree that you have suffered disproportionately because of your commitment to marijuana as part of your religion.
Yeah, I personally think that there must be special recognition given to Rastafari. I mentioned earlier position paper, because the OIU, the Organization of Rastafarian Unity, we actually would have put together a position paper. It was firstly done on a CARICOM level. The Caribbean Rastafari Organization, we were able to come up with a position paper, and then we would have tweaked it accordingly to the various islands. But basically it's the same structure. And again, it is a reparatory approach. Basically saying, yes, we have to be compensated. We must be compensated for those atrocities. And then we went ahead and we think how much the government like to borrow, ain't got no money. And the whole idea was not so much about the money. The whole idea now was, if for any reason the government now is taking this herb and looking into the economic benefits, Rastafari must be upfront on that level of discussion. We must be recognized. The apology would definitely be an acknowledgement of the wrongdoings. We would have made it easy for the government, because we would have gone through the various aspects of our lifestyle and given the government many suggestions as how they could repay or compensate I&I for those atrocities. Let's look at license. We asked for license, we asked for free license. We also asked for the variety of license, because looking at what is happening across the region, there is not just one set license. There seems to be license for growing, license for manufacturing and so on. But we are saying we deserve to have a free license. What we are doing in interim is establishing a cooperative, so we could be inclusive and give different ones out there the opportunity to be a part of it, because we may not be able to give everybody a free license, and so you don't want people out there who, you know, to be left out. So we have asked for lands, we have asked for access to lands where we can grow our herb. We have asked for training opportunities, you know, be able to be sent and given the necessary training as to how we could master this industry, because what the government is pushing is well, a medicinal industry. So we want to be able to benefit from that industry. So the necessary training, the necessary infrastructure, business incentives, because it's a very expensive business to get into. We have also asked, well, our recognition for the sacrament is something that we would have gotten mostly through the court. But that was part of the whole position paper, in terms of I being able to use our herb, you know, without being harassed and so on. And so we can look at the other islands. Let's look at Antigua, for example. The Prime Minister would have had a special case where he basically would have seen Rastafari being there for him in his rough youth days and assisting him with his schooling and all kind of thing. And so Rastafari would have been very much a part of his upbringing. So he would have carved out a special section within the industry in Antigua for the Rastafari community. We are asking here in St. Kitts Nevis for something similar. Our opposition paper spells it out, and I think it is something that is very much within the ability of the government to give I&I. I don't think we're asking for anything that's that's impossible. I think it would be unfair to Rastafari not to have a special carve out. You could just be walking down the road and a policeman would know, if I stop that Rasta man and search him, I'm going to meet him with some ganja and I'm going to be able to carry him court and charge him some money. So we were actually singled out. So in this case, let's be singled out with the benefits as well.
Okay, it's 9 o'clock and we're going to open the lines. We have some callers who want to say something to us. Good evening, caller. You're on the mark. Hello?
Hello?
You're on the mark?
Yes. That young man cannot push his I&I down everybody's throat.
Yes.
Everybody do not want I&I. And they cannot put the I&I on decent people's land. Right? They try, as he said, get some land of his own and put his I&I on it. And he cannot push that down everybody's throat. It's all about them smoking drugs. right? Everybody don't want to smoke drugs, so he could pack that in right now. And have a good night.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you very much. And you know, it's interesting that this is our first caller because it's a member of the public who is basically demonstrating, and this is exactly my point, is that, you know, you have to strike a balance because there are people out there who have that view. The caller, in fact, if I can be presumptuous about the voice, sounds like an older individual. So that's what I'm saying. The societal shift that also has to happen. It's not just about why, you know, everybody must free up the herb and whatever. You have to also be in mind that having had decades and decades and decades of a particular type of philosophy, and if you want to say indoctrination, that's all right. You know, I'm 53 years old, I say, as a youth. I mean, I feared weed more than I feared, you know, anything else in the world, because, you know, your mother tell you it, basically, you know, and you know, you gentlemen would have grown up in a similar era. I mean, for you all to become Rasta and embrace marijuana would have required a tremendous amount of strength on your part.
If I could.
But hold the thought, because we have somebody in the line. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello.
Greetings in the name of our great African ancestors, especially the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and Queen and Zinga. Blessed evening, my beloved African brothers. Hotep.
Greetings.
Yes, brothers, I'm here listening. Brothers, first let me commend the sisters and brothers in the One Love Rastafari movement. Brothers, your brothers been doing some great work, man. You know, being your brothers for about 4 or 5 years now. And I always say, man, one of the most progressive Rastafari movement in Liam Megan Owali is the One Love Rastafari movement. No, brothers, let me say, Brother Ira, I'm more familiar with you.
Yes, sir.
I hear us Marcus couple of times too. But my thing, beloved, and if you can recall, I always spoke about this. I have seen in almost all of the Rastafari movement, not just in the Caribbean, right, up here to in North America, beloved, I have seen too many brothers up front. We are the sisters. I haven't heard about Empress Shelley for a long time. How the sister is doing, beloved?
She's doing well, man. She was supposed to be here tonight.
This is a joke, you know, brother. This serious. Because, brother, you see, we can't be like Caucasian with this macho thing when it comes to men, African men, brother. Can't be like our former enslavers. They're the sisters. They didn't even get a young brother and a young sister there. That's another problem. Not just in the Rastafari movement, in all Pan-African movements, beloved, even here in New York. And that's a problem. If we don't have youths, beloved, soon when I'm in my 60s, early 60s, when brothers like me, brothers like you, brothers like Ras Marcus and others, beloved, you got to get youth for continuum.
Yes, I.
In all of these organizations, I prefer say movements, beloved. We must do that, beloved. We must do that. And brother, let me say too, I am saying, beloved, and we are saying, it's full time. We are not black people, quote unquote black people. We are African people. Only time you should use the word black is our color, complexion, whatever you want to think. And we come in different shades of blackness. But we are African people first and foremost, beloved.
Yes, sir.
You want to tell me in 2022 I come to them Caucasian calendar, but not for another time. We're still using the word black to refer to ourselves when we know we are African people. Oh, brother, we got to do the right things. undo it. It should have been done for a very, very long time. Brother, and you always hear me say this, it got to be Africa and African people, not no black people. Because they got some Indians more black skin than me and you. I don't know. I never seen a picture of you, beloved, but yeah. So we got to just say African people are people, beloved. Now let me come to the ganja thing now. Herb, I prefer say herb, but I don't smoke, beloved. I don't smoke, but the amount of persecution, brutality, terrorism. I'm speaking about St. Kitts Nevis now. And the brother, I was a victim. I mean, I choose not to cut my locks. I was in Fort Farm in the 70s, beloved. And I refused because nobody begged Brother Nabu bow buckle and bend. I'd rather make my transition. And I left St. Kitts Nevis because of what was going on. I didn't want my maternal grandparents to cry because then I will do something which I don't want to disclose now. But that, I don't pass that. Beloved, the amount of terrorism Rastafari went through in St. Kitts Nevis. But when it comes to the herb, we must demand that we get an apology from CARICOM and the Rastafari movement in each territory in CARICOM. Beloved, we must, when it comes to the herb, we must be front and center because we went through the most terrorism, man. I see brothers get beat, the locks pull out, yabba bashing their heads, beloved. So ain't no white boy and no white girl and nobody is supposed to come in these territories and control the trade. These governments, and we must demand that the Rastafari movement must be front and center. And like you said, brother, reparations, farming lands and things. Well, in saying that, beloved, we must demand too that the young sisters and brothers go away to study chemistry so they become chemists and make the herb in all forms. Beloved, that must be done. Because this can't be no Mickey Mouse show, you know, beloved. It must be serious. And the money is to be made. I'm not saying they just got to be solely African people who are Rastas. No. Other people went through a lot of tribulation too. But in saying that, beloved, African people must control the herb trade in CARICOM. Nobody is supposed to come and take that from us as African people, man. We suffer too much at the hands of our own people and others, beloved. So, brothers, I could say a lot, and I got a lot to say, but it's not about Brother Nabo, man. It's about African people, especially the Rastafari movement.
Yes, sir.
And Rasta, beloved, because we went through a lot. But up to this day, I don't let things bother me, you know, but sometimes, man, that thing that I went through, and other brothers had to left high school, beloved brother, you know, some of them cut the locks, but, you know, that's for another time. But I wasn't going to do that because nobody make Brother Nabo bow buckler bed. Brothers, heal up Sister Shelley, and brother, take that thing into consideration, man. You got to be more representation of the African queens and princesses and princes. Brothers, continue to listen, keep up the great works. Pan-Africanism our first. One love, my beloved brothers.
One perfect love, brother.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Like Nabu had a text waiting, man, you know? He normally would call and talk to me, but tonight he was passionate. about
The
it.
elders face a lot in them times.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
a lot on
and
one.
that is the reality, you know. So, yes, Marcus. Tell me.
I wanna go back to the first caller when she speaks about smoking the drugs and well, I like to tell the caller that using marijuana is not a drug. She got to differentiate the difference between a drug and marijuana. A drug is a man-made thing which is made in a lab. Marijuana is a natural plant created for mankind, for the services of mankind by the Almighty. And she cannot put marijuana into the same category as a drug. That's wrong. Marijuana is a natural plant, and you have respect for the Almighty, you must have respect for the good herb as well. Give thanks, Rastafari.
What I also wanted to say, it's not just about smoking, but I do understand the concern of the caller. However, it's important that, as I said earlier, we know the harmful effects of the marijuana and of the second-hand smoking. But I also again think that we should all practice tolerance in whatever we do, accommodating people and not making people feel uncomfortable. And really and truly, it's in the early stages when Rastas were sort of pushed aside, and it was really a height of discrimination. The day of today, you don't want to be pushed aside, and we're not going to be pushed aside by anybody. We stand our rightful place in this society. But really and truly, Rastas should really be on their side. We need to physically come out of Babylon and this type of living. I mean, the kind of energy that is here in Babylon is really not too uplifting for I and I. We need to be setting up our little communities in the hillside and enjoy fresh, clean, unpolluted air and spring water and that kind of thing. So it is really something that we need to aspire to. We probably won't have so much problems, But I back to Nabo, I do understand the cry and the concern more so in terms of having the empresses. And if you realize when I greeted ones and ones, I greet you in the name of the king and the queen. We always recognize the god and the goddess, the balance. God made man, made woman. And so it is something that is very, very conscious for I and I. Unfortunately, we have that situation in many organizations, where you have a lot of Rasta, a lot of men and not the women up front. Can't say that too much about the politics in Nevis right now. Lots of women at the table.
Well, I like to see there's lots of people.
and that is how we should be looking at it.
It's 9:15 o'clock. We're taking some calls at 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. We're here with Ras Marcus and Ras Iroy having a discussion celebrating the Black story, and we're taking your calls. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Good evening to you.
Good evening, dear family.
Good evening.
I want to touch on the question of the harassment still. I thought the Attorney General had mentioned at some point in time that you're allowed 5 trees to grow 5 trees in your backyard or something like that. I still hear people complaining that police still pulling up the trees and them backyard and this type of thing. So I want you guys to shed some light on that. And from the government standpoint, Mark is a unity government. He's a member of the unity government. What has been happening with this granny business?
With this what business?
What is happening with this granny business? There seems to be a lot.
Well, I think I can answer that directly because we had been having quite a few discussions at the cabinet level on this issue. And there are in fact some of us, and I put myself in that number, who think that we should have really completed this process a long time ago. I think where we now are is that there is a licensing committee. It has been put together, I think, headed by Mr. Ernest Amry in St. Kitts. I think Ira, you play a role on that. And they were charged coming up with some structure, because all that we're saying here tonight are things that are being debated and things that are being discussed. Why? Because there is some recognition, and I can say that I and others are advocating very strongly that there be a carve out, but there's also the recognition that others are coming in as investors, quote unquote, who want to do, you know, the type of scientific and medicinal type of analysis. And so the question really is, how far do we go? There are some countries that seem to be of a view that it is okay for medicinal, religious, and perhaps scientific purposes, but recreational use is problematic. Only I think Uruguay and Canada have gone all the way and said, well, you could use marijuana for whatever. Other countries have sort of done carve-outs. Even in the great United States, in some of the states that they say you still have to get a prescription to go and get marijuana. So it's more of a medicinal thing, even though of course that is, we understand that can be abused. So really, it's the pace is slow, Carla. It is slower than a lot of us would like. But the Attorney General has reported that progress is being made. I believe that the committee or some representation is supposed to make a final position known to the cabinet. And the issues really are, you know, in terms of licensing, how much you want to charge. You know, a man coming in from New York wants to set up something here, a lab or something, how much you want to charge him. You know, how do you deal with those issues? And then an issue that keeps popping up is the banking sector. Because if IUI and Marcus going to start, Ras farms to grow marijuana, right? And they're going to be making brownie and oil and, you know, whatever. And the tourists coming can hold their meds down on Pinnis Beach because the man supplying, right?
Yeah.
The issue now happens, well, does Ras farms require a license? Do they need a business license? And if they get a business license and the government said we are licensed to grow marijuana and distribute marijuana and process marijuana, where do they do their banking? Bank of Nevis can allow them to bank with Bank of Nevis and say on the farm, well, what is your business? Our business is growing marijuana, selling marijuana. Bank of Nevis is saying, boy, we have Bank of New York as our correspondent bank. And marijuana not legal in New York. Marijuana not legal in America as a federal matter. So what happens if we get cut off? No. I mean, there are issues out there that go beyond the smoking or even the selling and the farming. And even in the United States, you have a lot of states where fellas are saying it's largely a cash business because they can't get the proceeds into the regular banking system.
How does Canada filter their money into the system?
Huh?
Canada, how they get their money filtered into the system?
Yeah, but I think you know, talking about Canada and talking about St. Kitts Nevis is like talking about David and Goliath, in the sense that we got to be careful with some of the comparisons we make. Canada is a global power. St. Kitts Nevis is not. St. Kitts Nevis requires correspondent banking relations, for example, in the bigger countries, in order for you to send money here or send money there and do certain things. Canada may not have the same requirements because they got power that we don't have. So I think that while it's good to look at those countries and see what they're doing, it's never good to say, well, them do it, so that means we can do it too, because whale and sprat don't swim in the same pool, you know. So we have to understand that.
Yeah, I understand that. But you know what happened? It's about time we start to look at alternatives and get away from this America system. Get away from the devil. We've been connected to the devil for far too long, and we seem to be idolizing everything the devil says we're doing. And that's what leading us astray. We need to look for alternatives. America, in some states in America, they're selling weed more than any place else in the world.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And
that.
it's a profitable thing for them.
My brother, you and I are not necessarily disagreeing, you know. I'm just pointing out to you. You asked why this matter has taken a while. So I was seeking to point out to you that there are a number of considerations. Most people out there, if you ask, in my view, the so-called man on the Gingerland bus, right? And you say to the man on the Gingerland bus, what do you think about this man? Man, let the man them smoke the weed. You know you're going to get that kind of response, right? I don't see no big deal with it. But we're now talking about the economics of it. How do you commercialize it? How do you ensure that Rasta and others can make a living from it? The only way you make a living from it is to have a business. And when you have a business, business involves money. It involves buying and selling.
Yeah.
So when you don't buy and you don't sell, the question is now what happens to your money? Really? You put it under your bed?
Sometimes people used to bury their money, you know?
Yes, but no man, you can't bury the money. You bury the money, you come back and a man dig it up. Where about that? Yeah?
You can tell me.
So I mean really, so I'm just highlighting that as one of the issues that keeps popping up.
I get your vibe.
Understand?
But you know, we could use the Canadian banking system, as the caller say. We don't have to continue tying ourselves to the US. We can find alternative banking routes.
Alternatives, that's my point. We need to look for alternatives. Not because one road black man with us give up, we can't say no, we can't do that.
And
we got to find another route.
As Haile Selassie say, even in the 21st century, David could still beat Goliath.
Exactly. And another point, Mark, I want to say that with you. As a premier, is it part of your thinking? Is it in your administration mentality to give Rasta looking ahead, right? If we go to develop these things, land, because land is an issue, right? In Nevis and now land is an issue, not so much in St. Kitts, but in Nevis land is limited. Rastafari need some sort of land so that they can concentrate on what they want to do in terms of the industry.
Well,
because he doesn't take, you can't take half an acre and you can't take 2 acres.
Well,
you need to be talking about 3, 5 acres, 6 acres.
Okay. Well, I hear you and I understand what you're asking, and I think you've answered your question in a way. Because the problem that we have in Nevis is really a scarcity of land. Now, if that statement is replayed on its own, it may sound odd. But what I mean is the government's control and access to lands. The history of Nevis and the history of St. Kitts are two different histories in terms of how land and land ownership evolved. The people of St. Kitts have always been sort of relegated to small little plots of land. A lot of people over there are still paying rent. I mean, generation after generation pays rent. And the lands were concentrated in the hands of the sugar planters in St. Kitts. Later, when Bratcher would have acquired the lands and Simmons would have paid for the lands became government owned. So vast acreages, thousands of acres of land in St. Kitts are owned by the government. That is not the Nevis history. The Nevis history, as we all know, is that everybody owns a little piece of land. Most of the lands in Nevis, by far, are in the hands of private landowners, not the government. I can tell you right now that the government, even in terms of our housing program, has run into a serious problem because we don't have land on which to build. In Charlestown, for example, we're doing 2 housing developments, one in Hamilton, one at the top of Paddock Road, and we have to buy land from private persons in order to try and execute those 2 housing developments to bring some relief to people. So it is a different proposition when people in Nevis say why government should make some land available. Because the government simply doesn't have the access. And where the government does own some lands, a lot of times it is land that doesn't have any infrastructure associated with it. So the cost of putting water and electricity on the road would be, at this point, for us prohibitive. What I feel, caller, I hear you about the large acreage, but I turn the question back to you in this way. Would Rastas be open to the use of technology in terms of the production of marijuana? What I mean by that is that we have been pushing, even in traditional agriculture, more use of things like the shade house, the greenhouse, that kind of technology. Why? Because the science suggests that it takes up less land, it yields higher yields, and it is easier to control in terms of pests and that kind of thing,
yeah.
and from the elements. So that's an issue. Would you consider that to be an unnatural type of agriculture, and therefore you need 5-10 acres of land, so you got to go out in the field under the sun? Or is that something that you would embrace, because that then solves the land problem to some extent, because you can now do what you would do on 2-3 acres of land out there, farm in the traditional way. You can probably do with 2 shade houses that are situated on a 1/4 acre. So I raise that because we have to, as you say, you're the one who say we got to find solutions, we got to think outside the box, and it may not be possible. Your brethren in Singits, Dr. Harris may get up tomorrow and say, man, take 10 acres here and you take 10 acres there, because they've got thousands of acres down there. Nevis, we can't do that because we just don't have it.
So under the circumstances, as long as the chemical use, as long as we don't use the chemical use, or we minimize on the chemical use or cut out the chemical use, right? I don't foresee any problem there, because we need to develop, and Rasta, we have the avenue. Give us the space and give us the opportunity, and we'll develop. We'll develop over a period of time. It only takes one person to have an interest, and then it catches on. You know how it goes in Nevis. If you do something and you seem to be progressing, everybody's going to try the same thing, right? So we need to progress. We need to progress and give them an opportunity to develop. We will. There's another question, my final question, and it's still pertaining to. We don't know how your policy, your government policy is, but these all ruins and so on, these all sugar estates and ruins and so on. There is one over what you call it, Spring Hill. I think it's on private property, but when I look at it, I see it as a tourist attraction with some development. We don't know if the government can find a way to work out bargain with the owners to get a certain section, and we have failed it to extent because the development we depend on tourism a lot, and it's a good, beautiful site, and other things can spring from that. We don't know if you're familiar with it. This area, Spring is going up Pound Westbury.
I'm not familiar with the particular site you're describing, but I think that the government has been trying, at least with government sites, island-wide. We've done tremendous level of work down at New River, for example. I don't know if you've gone to Fort Charles recently. We've done a lot of work over there. We have tried to develop the heritage village over there at Fothergills. We have worked on various sites. We're doing some work over there at what do you call the area there by Esme there? Oh dear, there. Yeah,
Manning.
Yeah, Manning.
Well, the area just above Esme's bar there. You know, we've done some work there. So we continue to do. In fact, we have hired Sylvester Mead, who really has been the person who is the point person.
Yes, I am me, and I'm not aware of that.
Oh, your name is Sylvester too?
Yeah, that's my name.
No, me don't know your name, Sylvester. I know your name. I know your name. I know your name, Premier Mead. Right? So you know, we have been trying. The truth is that we have worked closely with the Nevis Historical and Conservation Society. We work closely with there's a group now which is seeking to have Nevis designated as a various sites, World Heritage sites. So we've been doing some work, but there's work still to be done. And you're right that some of these sites, you take a site like Cottle Church, of tremendous significance history. But Cottle Church is actually on private property. A lot of people don't know that.
And there's another one down here at Cadesbury. What is the name?
Fort Ashby? Fort Ashby?
Fort Ashby, that's correct.
But Fort Ashby is government owned. As a matter of fact, we had some issues with it, but we now have it fully back in the hands of the government. But we've been making strides. I mean, you take Bath Hotel, for example. For years, I think all of us assumed Bath Hotel belonged to the government. But Bath Hotel, the government never had no title for Bath Hotel. We had to go to court just in the last, I think, within the last year, and finally got a title for Bath Hotel for the people of Nevis. It's one of the things I feel very proud about, because all these years there was no title in the hands of the people of Nevis for Bath Hotel. So all we talk about was Bath Stream and Bath Hotel and Railway and all kind of thing. The title for that was still in the name of a company. And in fact, we had to go to court and engage, because somebody had stepped forward and was trying a little smartness. So, when the campaign starts, we're going to talk about him something.
Let me just summarize.
Just so I know, it was not an empress who tried to smartness. Yes, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I was just saying that good show, and I support the sentiment expressed by by some of the callers and what I said, and just continue to do the good work.
All right.
I'll listen out here.
Okay, my brother. It is 9:30. We have a half an hour left. There may be people who want to call. If they do, 469-1616, 469-1700. The callers are clearly animated and engaged. And even though we've only had a few callers, for the most part, they've shared from their own experience, particularly Brother Nabu, who clearly would have walked the walk, and he said that he at Fort Farm had to relocate because of the persecution at the time. We've heard from Mr. Meade, he named Sylvester, so we have to accept that. And the question now is really, where do we go and how do we move forward? So the whole idea of the economics and the commercialization, and Rasta being in the vanguard of that and being able to benefit from it, is an issue that is being raised. So how do you all respond to that?
This being our story, and you notice I'm not going to say black history. It's our story, not his story. We look back at economics, for example. The first Wall Street was Black Wall Street, Before all the Dow Jones and all of them, it was black people who had that system set up and running for the benefit of the freed blacks. And we see a time like now where the opportunity is for I to make some serious money from the cannabis industry. We have never just said that it is only for sacrament. We have always used ganja in its entirety, and so it has always supported the whole lifestyle of I. And it really boils down to the economics. And so we are saying that we can make great strides if given the opportunity. I want to touch on something that the caller raised, though, and it has to do with the laws and so on. I mentioned earlier we need to go back to the drawing board, because a lot of the laws are still sort of confusing. That whole idea of the 5 trees, for example. Now, when Brother Sankofa and the Rastafari community, when we took the government to court, we would have realized that what the judge basically said is the Drug Act is unconstitutional. What it is saying is there are things in the Drug Act that is preventing the Rasta man from exercising his constitutional right. And so he asked the government to clean up your Drug Act, make it align with the Constitution. And so for law officers to be making the excuse now about this is not gazetted and that is not gazetted, I think it is foolishness. Because from years ago, your Drug Act has been illegal. So you cannot be locking up people now on the same illegal act when we already went to court and the judge already tell you need to change the Drug Act. I mean, you ask how earlier when we talk about the difference in how people feel about herb right now. Right now, if police take up your herb, you could carry them to court. That's what it. That's how the table has turned. If you in possession of your little ganja at home for your personal use and police come there and take it up, you can take them to court for your herb. And so, the 5 trees, this is really a personal right. The right for you to have within your person 5 trees. But all of a sudden, they want to take these 5 trees and make it a household right. Which is basically saying if Marcus and I live together, we can only have 5 trees. If I live alone, I can have 5 trees. If 10 of us live in the house, we can only have 5 trees. That is ridiculous. So something like that needs to go back to the drawing board. If you have 5 trees and they bear more than and they produce more than the allotted 2 ounces, what do you do? Can you maybe you have to keep the herb on the tree and use it off the tree. So there are a lot of things that need to be worked out, simply because a lot of framers of the regulations are not people who really familiar with the industry, and they don't really know the ins and out. I remember the discussing with the Attorney General. They wanted to, was it 15 grams, allow us to have 15 grams. And we literally had to educate the committee and say, listen, all in the mind of the general public is about smoking. So when they hear marijuana, they say, oh, they want to smoke. This is not about smoking. Many people do not smoke. Smoking is it's a small percentage of the use of the herb. We're talking about the use of the herb. And even if it's smoking, some people smoke a spliff once a day. Some people smoke a spliff 2 times a day. Some of us smoke it spliff in, spliff out. Some man don't use spliff, some man use a chalice where they use almost an ounce. Some people don't smoke. Some people make oil where you might need a pound. And so the kind of quantities that you're giving, you still have to be in line with how the herb is going to be used. And so it is important for that discussion.
Let's take this call and see if the call is still there. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening, Mr. Premier. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
And let me say good evening to your guests, Roy, and my good classmate, Marcus.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, gentlemen.
Bless you.
Honorable Premier, just wanted to just change the tempo just a quick bit, just to speak briefly about my cleanup activity that has been happening in my constituency for the month of February. But before I do so, let me also extend some condolences to my relatives here in Hanley's Road, the Maynard family, in particular to Mildred and Eugene and Auntie Fanny and the entire crew down here in Hanley's Road. We would have lost a family member in England, Gloria Joseph. So we would have lost 2 members of the family, the Maynard family. In recent times, we would have lost Morris a couple of weeks ago. I know we would have lost Gloria in England. And so I want to just send condolences to the entire family at this point in time. So as I said, I wanted to just speak briefly about my cleanup campaign in St. George, Gingerland for the month of February. Of course, I would have been on your show, Mr. Premier. I've spoken about it, and I would have called in sometime after. And I just want to say how well the cleanup has been going. We would have had the second Saturday for white goods cleanup this past Saturday, the 19th. And what a day that was. In total, for the 2 Saturdays, of course, we would have started on the 5th. We had to abort because of the weather. We were supposed to continue on the 12th. We couldn't. And then we continued this past Saturday. And for this past Saturday and the 5th, I think we would have done probably close to 20 bin loads of white goods from St. George Gingerland. The response was overwhelming. We had a lot of stuff to take to the landfill. And I want to thank all the truckers and the helpers for the fantastic support. And, of course, I want to say a very big thank you as well to the Nevis Solid Waste Management Authority. They worked with me very, very well. And a special thank you to the drivers, Ev, as well as I want to say a special thank you to a gentleman who works for Solid Waste, one of the drivers by the name of Kwame. Because I witnessed something this past weekend, and I mean, every time I think about it, I am just in awe with the commitment and dedication of that driver from solid waste. I was at the hospital visiting on Friday afternoon, Mr. Premier, and while I was there speaking to a nurse in the surgical ward, I heard someone calling out to me, and from on the hospital bed, I hadn't a clue who the person was, so I went over, and the person was just saying, Mr. Evelyn, I'm coming to work for you tomorrow. I was wondering, who is this person? When I realized it was a driver from solid waste. And you could see he was drowsy. Apparently he had some kind of little surgery. And, he said, I'm coming to work for you tomorrow. And, he was saying it in a very, very drowsy way, because you see, he was still under the anesthesia. And I said, you cannot come to work tomorrow. Just try to rest yourself. And he insisted, I am coming to work for you tomorrow, because he knew we had this white goods cleanup. And I really thought it was wishful thinking on his part, because in no way I could have thought that that gentleman who was there so drowsy around 5 o'clock Friday afternoon could be in any condition to be driving a truck on Saturday morning. To my amazement, Saturday morning he was up, out of the hospital, and driving the truck for solid waste, made several trips to Rollins and Cligot, and he deserves the highest commendation, because, as I said, you don't find workers with that kind of commitment and dedication to service anymore. And I really want to publicly commend him, because, as I said, I really thought it was wishful thinking on his part when he was lying there in his hospital bed Friday afternoon when he spoke to me around 5 to be on the road Saturday morning, driving the truck to pick up those bins with the white goods. So kudos to you, Kwame. Kudos to Solid Waste. And I said I want to thank them for their support. Of course, this past Saturday we were also supposed to have the village cleanups. We want to thank those who would have participated, but because we had to continue with the white goods cleanup, it kind of overshadowed that. But I really want to thank those who would have done. A few persons in their respective villages cleaned. I want to thank the folks over at Hickman's and Zion and Rollins and Matchman's and so on, and Hanley's Road, who did some cleaning. But we are climaxing our month of cleanup with a coastal cleanup this Saturday, the 26th, in the Indian Castle area, and we also have some volunteers who will do some work over in the Huggins area as well. That is over there below New River Coconut Walk. And for persons who are interested, please let us know if you're interested in coming to clean up in the Indian Castle area. You can contact me, 662-6043, 663-8941. It starts at 7 o'clock on Saturday morning. We shouldn't be long, maybe just about an hour. So if you want to just take an hour of your time to come and help clean up our coastline, please let us know. And as I said, if you want to go, if you're over in the Hickman and Zion area and you want to clean up over in the Huggins area as well, you can contact Governor or Joyce. And so we will climax our cleanup month with the coastal cleanup this Saturday at Indian Castle at 7 o'clock, at Huggins Bay at 7 o'clock as well. And so, as I said, if you are interested in coming along with us at Indian Castle, please give me a call and let me know, so at least we could know to expect you. But once again, I want to thank all who have been a part of this cleanup during the month, and things have gone extremely well. And I want to thank you as well, Mr. Premier, for allowing me these few minutes.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. That's the Honorable Eric Evelyn, who has really been doing a tremendous job for the whole month, has been doing a cleanup in his constituency and making his report. So thank you for that, Eric, and we are happy to hear that things have been going well. Let's go back to the phones quickly. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Good night, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
That's Mr. Evelyn was just speaking.
Yes.
I want to know that when he will come to Finkis to get a clean-up campaign too. Because the environment put both Finkis and Nevis.
Call him, he gave you his number, 662.
Hello?
I said call him, he gave you his number.
You don't give me his number?
He gave it to you just now, 662.
I wasn't listening the number because I had to turn down the radio to get to call.
Ah, okay.
Yes, so I hope you're listening.
All right.
It was clean up too, guys, the environment minister.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do, however, think that he was talking about a cleanup in his constituency. But I think you're saying that all of St. Nevis is his constituency. So that's going to be an interesting thing. It is 14 minutes to. Gentlemen, we have been here, we've been having a good chat about this. I want to know, because I think it would be remiss of us not to say a word about the whole issue of reparations. We have spent a lot of time.
Coming to that, you know.
Yeah, we have spent a lot of time on this issue of ganja. Reparations, where are we? What is the sense of where we are as a people and as a region in relation to that issue?
Well, you know, within the conviction of Rastafari, you know, reparation is one of the things that we look forward to, you know. Repatriation, you know. And we must be compensated for the atrocity which have been done to black people, you know, coming from Africa. You know, when the white man came into Africa, you know, they bring the Bible and they bring Christianity, you know. I people was robbed, raped, treat, kill, maim, throw overboard, all in the name of Christianity and a white Jesus. So I as a black people, not just for Rastafari, but self-conscious people, African home and abroad, is now crying out for reparative justice, which should have been given unto I years ago now. We've been fighting for this years upon years, and we haven't really reached the place where we really want to be. So Rastafari is here to continue the works. I know the One Love Rastafari movement, the organization of Rastafari Unity, the Caribbean Rastafari organization, which our organization is part of, is fighting for reparation in these times.
Let me just ask you, just before you come in, Rastafari, let me just ask you quickly, because you made a comment about the enslavers going to Africa, and they had the Bible and they took Jesus Christ, as you say, and basically enslaved people in the name of Christianity. I'm a little curious, and the reason I asked the question is because I saw recently that Sir Eric Williams, former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, wrote a very famous thesis called Capitalism and Slavery, in which, when he was at Oxford, that was his thesis, and he made the argument that the enslavers pointed to the abolitionist movement as being a spiritual movement guided by Christianity to free the enslaved African people. But he made the argument and used empirical data to show that it had nothing to do with morality or Christianity, but everything to do with economics, and that slavery had become uneconomical, that it was now cheaper to produce sugar. So other means, technology had developed. Napoleon, for example, had pioneered the beet sugar, producing sugar from beets, and so the idea of having large numbers of enslaved people that you had to feed and house and all of that it was no longer economically viable. And of course that was not an acceptable argument. And what was interesting, I read this article just a few weeks ago, that as a consequence no major publishing house in the UK had ever published his work. That the book had been published in America and other places, but never in the UK, where he would have studied. And so this, what is considered a seminal work, was a disruptive work, because it sought to say, don't pat yourself on the back and say that you are moral and morally upright it is really because the slavery thing was no longer making money for you. That is why you abolished it, rather than you finding morality. Alright, give me half a minute, let me take this call and we come back. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello? Hello?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You're on the mark, go ahead please.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
If you have your own land, can the corporation build a house for you?
Yes, we have done that in the past.
In the past, what about now in the future?
Well, this is not the future, this is the present.
The present.
Yes. So we can certainly do that, but you'll have to speak to the corporation.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Alright.
How is it that I made an appointment to see you so long I can't even get to see you?
Oh, you can't get to see me. I'm the easiest person in the world to see.
You know, not to tell you, the hardest nut to crack right now.
Huh?
Hard to crack.
I got to work on that then. I got to make it not softer to crack because I think I'm really available and accessible.
No.
No? Okay, let me sort that out then.
But to start out, me going to start it out myself.
You want to sort it out yourself?
Because whenever I meet you, I'm going to do what I have to do.
Alright. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, blessed love. I thought the lady was going to say she has her own land and she could grow some weed. That's so alright, tell me, go ahead.
Yeah, it was basically on the reparation issue. Because we would have seen, but I'm glad you went back to Williams, because you would have seen people like even Arthur Lewis was a big pusher for reparations. And there's no doubt that reparation is due. And we should benefit from it. However, though, I'm a bit disappointed in CARICOM. I think some years ago CARICOM would have made a decision that, you know, we would take up this whole issue of reparations. I still see a lot of countries within the region are suffering. The local or the national reparation committees are not functioning at capacity. There are a lot of budgetary issues where monies are not available, monies are not set aside to carry out the work of these national committees, which is something that CARICOM would have recommended to each of the country. And that in itself, I think, doesn't look good regionally, because when we sit at Caribbean Rastafari level and each one has to report on where the country is at in reparation, you know, it is really a shame. St. Kitts Nevis, we have a national committee that has done some work, not as much as it can do or should have done, but it has done some work. I would just like to see that greater push, you know, in getting the committee the necessary equipment and all the basic things that it needs so that it could carry out its work. But education, I think education is definitely needed across the board. Our curriculum must be seriously bombarded with a change in the way we teach history, which would bring about a different understanding to our children. We can't sit here and talk about not wanting them to be exposed to what really happened, because they'll get too angry. You know, we must teach them if it means teaching them the anger management skills, so that they are better able to accept certain information, because the atrocities back then has to be told. So the appreciation for reparation could make a difference. We in Rastafari, though, we are working very closely with the continent. We have something called RSAP, Reparation Settlement Project, where we are working on assisting people who want to relocate. This is where people like you would come in, because we have countries out there who are saying, hey, come home. You guys in the diaspora, come home. It was just a couple of weeks ago maybe where a new flag that represent the 6th region of Africa, the diaspora flag, basically us who are living outside the continent, was accepted. And so what it is basically saying is those of us who are in the region who want to return governments they are saying, hey, free citizenship, programs where you can be given lands to work. You go in with certain projects where you can get certain assistance. But at the same time, we are thinking of, number one, preparing ourselves to go home, preparing ourselves to make necessary investments and so on in the region that we decide to go to.
So how would you respond to the suggestion that we are home, that this is home, that for generations this has been our home, Nevis, St. Kitts, the Caribbean, the region? Because I hear it, and I don't like to dwell in the past, but my mother of blessed memory lived in England for some time, and I believe I shared it with you in the past, where she lived in England, and she said to me she was an audio typist, and she encountered many Africans from Africa, and she said that they spoke to her and viewed her in a particular way, because they said to her that she was the daughter of slaves and that she said they used to refer to as Heinz 57 variety. So I said, what does that mean? And she said, well, at the time, Heinz, that does baked beans and things, they made 57 different varieties of products, and what they were saying was, you're all mixed up, you're not pure. And so almost as if there was a certain looking down upon, because you're not considered to be African in the sense that you're not from the continent. I wonder sometimes, and I say this in all sincerity, how much of these things are sentiment and how much of it is really practical, the sense of saying, why, 100, 200,000, 2 million people for that matter will move back to Africa. How do they fit into Africa? How do they fit into that? And will Africans themselves in Africa? And I ask that against the backdrop, Iri and Marcus, that we have even the Visions who left here and go England and come back, and they have a hard time settling back here, and they're born here. By the time they come back and people say, oh, you think you know more than us, you think you're better than us, where you come from? When you are struggling in England, I eat pudding and eating fish and chips. Well, you know about us and our struggle. You get that, and I get a lot. In fact, the other day I had a meeting with some ladies who are all retired, very accomplished, and they were complaining, saying, boy, they've been knocking on the door, trying to do things here, but there's a resistance. Mm-hmm. So I hear the thing about the moving back. The reparations part, I agree. The moving back is something that I look at and I say, boy, we ourselves are struggling to get people. Maybe what we should do is encourage Africans to move to the diaspora.
No, Mr. No. Let me tell you something, right? Let me tell you something. Number one,
you don't think having some Africans moving to Nevis would be a good thing for us?
Of course, there need to be that exchange.
Yes.
There need to be that level of exchange. But listen, Africa has all that we need to take us into the 21st century. While we are here sitting back and refusing Africa, every other major country in this world is fighting for peace of Africa.
Embracing and investing.
Exactly. Everything that this world needs to move into this 21st century is in Africa. So what we are saying is, let us go home to control our own resources. Africa has enough land for the whole of the Caribbean. Some people would stay, some people would move back and forth. This is our home. We were born here. We don't have to be born in Africa to be an African. Being an African has nothing to do with where you were born, because when the cat get the kitten in the oven, they're not called biscuits, they're still kitten.
I love it.
So really and truly, not because we were born here. This is captured land. We were forcibly removed, and many would ask the question, because we were better off, We were not running around in trees and in caves when we were taken from Africa. We were operating the highest civilized societies. Man, some also had so much gold. I mean, it's just knowing your history.
I think the history shows that.
Knowing the history. And so it is important, though, especially from an economic standpoint, that we go back, we say move forward to Africa. This is the time. If no other time, it is now.
The music is starting up. First, Marcus, I'll give you a final word.
Yeah, his foundation is in the whole mountains. Haile Selassie, I love it, the gate of Zion, more than all the dwelling of Jacobs. Glorious things are spoken of Zion, city of the Almighty. I will make mention of Rahab and Babylon to them that know me. Behold, the Philistine Tyre in Ethiopia, this man Haile Selassie, I was born there. And of Zion it shall be said, this and that man was born there, and the highest himself shall establish Ethiopia. The Most High shall written and counted up his children, Rastafari, who says this and that man was born within Ethiopia, as well as players and singers of the instrument, they shall be there. That's putting down thee. For Haile Selassie, King Rastafari, Empress Meninai, great ancestors I, great gods and goddess of the ancient and black eye eternal race. Glory to word and glory to sound, glory to the power of the living eye. Haile Selassie, King Rastafari. So let the words of thy mouth and the imitation of thy heart be accepted in thy sight. Haile Selassie, thy strength and thy redeemer. Rastafari. One perfect love.
Thank you very much for being here, gentlemen. 2 hours, I think a good discussion. God bless and keep. And the show be broadcast tomorrow at 1 p.m. right here on the Eastern Caribbean's only powerhouse, VON Radio. Thank you, good night, and God bless you.
Yes, thanks.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited